Welcome back to SoCap Talks, helping innovators build tomorrow, today. Now here's your hosts, Devon Kearns and Eric Sutphin.
All right, welcome back to SoCap Talks. This week we are having our SoCap Spotlight, and joining me today is Russell Castagnero from Wampie, and we have Devon Kearns as well joining us from SoCap to talk about Bitcoin and just Bitcurrency in general. This whole blockchain technology is something that most people aren't aware of. Traditionally, we know finance, we know commerce, we know money, but this is something that a lot of people have heard about, yet even the basics, most people have no idea what is blockchain. They don't know how the transaction works. Much of this is very foreign to people. So we're very blessed to be able to have Russell here to talk about, one, the industry as a whole, the trends of where it's going, and two, a unique solution that you have to the marketplace, which is even now a little overdue. Bitcoin's been around for how many years now?
Since 2009.
So
seven,
just the end of 2017,
really.
but 7-8 years, and we're just starting to really look at what does this mean for the industry as a whole. So we're excited to have you on here and chat more about the evolution of what the commerce industry is actually doing. So Russell, would you share a little bit about your background and what's brought you here today?
Sure. Well, for 13 years, I ran a company in Hawaii that did all the e-government and e-commerce. And we processed a lot of payments. So people paying their taxes, people starting new businesses, paying their annual filings, getting married, ordering President Obama's birth certificate, that kind of stuff. And yeah, they really did. And we were processing a lot of funds. And to make a long story short, there are enormous numbers of compliance issues that come up. Fraud was starting to peak, and you have all these problems as a merchant. Aside from having to pay a big percentage of your take, you have all this compliance, and then you have the banks to contend with, who are very particular about how you will process payments electronically. And I realized back then, as early as 2009, 2010, that if it was this hard for a company like us that was processing, by the time I left, we were processing 2.1 billion in payments a year. That for smaller players, it was a much bigger headache, and they were giving up a lot higher percentage, right? So if you've got a business that makes 40% margin, then suddenly 7% of their money is going to pay credit cards.
That's a lot.
And that's the difference between a profitable company and one that's just like scraping along or closing up. So it's a big deal, and the to have a way of payment that's as easy as cash or easier than cash has always been something that we've wanted electronically, but we've never been able to do it. And credit cards, God bless them, they gave us the ability to do something that would make payments, and it involves a lot of credit going back and forth. But for the first time with Bitcoin, you've got a payment method that allows an individual to pay another individual or another business without having to go through any third party, anything. It all goes directly to them.
So it's simplicity, because while convenience for the consumer, in the case of credit cards, a credit card is very convenient for the consumer, but for a business, it's actually quite complicated in between what rate are they paying and who are they going through, and is it keyed in? It actually can be very costly depending on all those variables.
Yeah, with very few exceptions, you as a merchant don't know how much you're going to pay as a credit. So you've got a base rate, which may be like 1.8, 2.0, something like that, and then there's an additional couple of fees that go on there that if you've got an Amex that's a mileage card that's also tied to, has a picture of your daughter on it, suddenly you're paying 5%. And it sounds like that's ridiculous, but that's not really that's not really an unrealistic thing to say. Right. But these mileage cards and benefit cards, they have really high rates, and as a merchant, you have to take them. You don't have any choice.
You kind of shared a story before we started here where you were talking about the difference between the cash handlers and the trucks that go to pick up the cash versus how e-commerce is actually interacting before this cryptocurrency. So kind of let's start with the basics. The original version of e-commerce, as soon as it became something where there were transactions occurring through the internet and online, these electronic transfers of money, start there and talk about some of the problems that are around that.
Well, oh boy, this you have to stop me on this one, okay? Because
Give us the Spark Notes version.
So you've got e-checks, which is like ACH, and that's where you give somebody your check routing number and your account number, and they do an ACH debit. And that is a super duper insecure system, because anyone who looks at a copy of your check can get the name on the account, the routing number, and the account number, right? So anybody who's ever seen you on your checks can get that information. I don't know if you remember the old days. You're not quite as old as I am, but people used to have their Social Security number and birth date and driver's license printed on their checks. Okay, wow. So it was just like amazing. We lived in a strange time. I'm like, at least I did. But
that's what I have on my business card.
Here, I'd like to give you my identity. Can you please take that for me? But so from a banking standpoint, with e-checks, which are relatively inexpensive, they have very, very poor security, which is why the gateways into those systems are so protected, right? Because you're passing all the information, and basically in one fell swoop, someone could do an ACH debit that would empty out your account. So there's a whole bunch of weird fraud controls, and there's a whole bunch of gatekeepers involved in banking electronic commerce.
So that part alone is interesting, because here we are with the cheapest way to transact between each other, yet the most insecure way to transact. So that seems like a complete, it sounds like a shitty version of what it should be. It should be the most protected way and the cheapest way, but unfortunately it's not the way it's set up.
Well, it is based on, what it's really based on is faxing. So it's based on facsimiles, that we would have a fax of a check sent over and someone could confirm it, and then the money could get sent through the federal network. And that's really, it's an electronic version of faxing. That's what it comes down. And that's what the banks are really super comfortable with. In fact, they're more comfortable with paper checks than they are with electronic payments, which blew my mind, but they are.
Even though it's totally insecure.
Even though it's totally insecure. Yeah. Both of them. I mean, anybody can go order a fake check.
Wow.
Right? So then you got credit cards, which were great. I don't know if you guys know how credit cards got created, but there was this guy who took a business, he was on a business outing, they went to dinner, and he forgot his wallet. And the restaurant wouldn't basically give him credit, so he had to call his wife to come bring his checkbook so he could write a check there. And so he created Diners Club from that.
No kidding.
Really, really interesting. And then the rest is history.
Yeah.
But credit cards are almost worse in a lot of ways, because just like in the banking example, you give all your information, right? You give your credit card account, your name, the little CVV number on the back that goes through. That all goes through the network. It goes at the point of sale, right? So if you're paying in person, it gets scanned by the hardware, or if they take it down. Then it goes to the Visa network. Then it goes, and any connection in between there. Then it goes to to the bank who's doing the credit card, and they extend credit. Now, you think Bitcoin's hard when you've heard people talk about Bitcoin. Nothing's as bizarre and contorted as credit cards. But they were smart. Nobody ever tried to describe credit cards. But it's
an interesting
like
point.
there's like two sides of credit going, and there's risk and there's fraud protection all along, and they're constantly upgrading the hardware to try and fight off these things. I don't know how about you guys, but I get calls all the time from Bank of America. Oh, we're going to issue another card because we think there might be a problem with that batch of cards that you were with. Yeah, no, nothing to worry about. This happens
There's a lot of ways for people, whether it be at the ATM or whether it be in an actual transaction itself. I mean, you can put these little card readers over an ATM or over a gas station that steal all of your identity.
Yeah. Yeah, gas stations are the real big one, right? They're not only that's where people steal it, but that's also where they test out cards to make sure. So everyone has their credit card charge that goes through Florida when you've never been to Florida in the last 10 years, and it's fraud. That's like a standard thing.
So a light bulb just went off for me where I probably would have been really leery of credit cards if someone was trying to describe the transaction early on the same way I'm trying to learn about Bitcoin. Instead of it just being currency, I'm sitting here going, oh no, you just pull out your card and swipe. Duh.
That's right.
And that's the way it was. That's the way it's always been. It's never really been described on the back end to me. So of course it feels.
And then they give them away like candy. You go to college and it's just, no, just write your name down. You get 2, you can get 5% cash back, and you get to get some airline miles. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
But here I've been hesitant to dive into anything having to do with cryptocurrency because I'm like, God, I don't understand it. But it is less complicated to understand than
it's much more straightforward.
Wow,
and unfortunately,
that's interesting.
it was divided. The people that made Bitcoin were super proud that we solved this problem.
Yeah.
I say we, like I did it. But that they solved this problem and they wanted to share, and they were sharing with groups of geeks.
Yeah.
And then they started trying to explain it. And as anybody knows, when you get people trying to geek out and explain things, everybody's like, oh, okay, this is cool. They look away, and they're not. It suddenly becomes less interesting.
And they call it things like the cloud. So simplify Bitcoin in your own words in this industry for those that are listening to this, that really it's still an ambiguous notion and concept. What is Bitcoin? What is the solution that this currency is providing to the marketplace?
So there's a few parts. The most important part to understand is that there is a ledger called the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain. And that's what everybody hears about. And every Bitcoin that's ever been mined, every transaction that's ever happened is on that Bitcoin blockchain. And there's software that you can download to be part of, to basically run the system. Right, and that requires a copy of this blockchain. So there's, I think 45,000 different nodes running. They all have their own copy of it, and so this ledger says, okay, this Bitcoin came into existence here from whatever event it was, and it moved from this location to this location to this location to this location. Now, what it doesn't have is a concept of an account.
So is this equivalent? Let me break it down for the listeners and myself, honestly. Is this the equivalent of allowing someone to say, print their money, and just like on the US dollar, there's a serial number? Yet with cash, you're not actually able to see, well, I paid you for that dinner that you spotted me on the other night, and then you went across the street to 7-Eleven and bought, a soda. You don't get to be able to actually follow the currency in a cash transaction. Yet in Bitcoin, what you're talking about is you get to see each piece that it touched, from the printing to where it's being passed. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you were talking about was more like credit, right? Because you have to maintain people's accounts to know who owes who, right? And with Bitcoin, you really only have value and location. So you can think of it as either an infinite wall of cubbies, those mail cubbies at work, that you have, or you can think of it as treasures, as like internet treasure chests, and basically all the addresses are public. Anyone can look in any address; they know how much is in it. They can even see where it came from or where anything went. They don't know who controls it, right? Because there's only this idea of a location, an address, and then you have a secret key that unlocks that address. So if you've got that secret key, then basically through the math you can do the decryption, but then you can unlock that and move it to someplace else.
So you have a PO box, but you don't know that PO box is associated with John Doe.
Correct.
And it's a clear PO box
that you can look into.
That I can look into.
And you can actually look into history and see, 6 months ago, this went in there, and it went out, and there was some more that came in, and went, So
but you don't know that that's Eric's. You just know that that's the locker number,
right,
with that currency in it.
Right, and to make things just a little more complicated, rarely do you reuse addresses. You'll use them for one purpose, and then once you've emptied an address, typically it stays empty. You don't use it again. Change. The wallet. So what the software, like most people use a software-based wallet to keep track of these addresses and these passwords. And all a wallet does, a wallet in the Bitcoin world doesn't hold any money, hold any value. It has your addresses and your secret codes that you have have control over. And then what it'll do is it'll go and say, oh, these are all the addresses I have. It goes to the blockchain, sees how much that is, gets the value of Bitcoin if you want to see, tells you how many you have in Bitcoin, or if you want to see how much you have in US dollars, like you're using a copay wallet or something like that, it goes and gets the exchange, does the math, and shows you how much you have. But you may have 2 addresses, you may have 500 addresses that are being maintained by that wallet at any given time. But it's all seamless to you as a user, right? Just as seamless as a credit card is.
So there's a bunch of cryptocurrencies that are evolving. There's Bitcoin, there's a myriad of them seemingly where people are saying, I'm buying them on a cents right now, right? Cents on the dollar. Yet we're seeing crypto at this point is north of $17,000 per coin.
Bitcoin.
For a Bitcoin. Share with us kind of the different types of currencies or coins that exist out there. What is the difference? Are they just like the euro and the American dollar, or could you break that down for us as well?
Yeah, I think that one of the most interesting things for me about different cryptos, right, is that in a currency you have fiscal and monetary policy, right, that you can exercise. So previous to the last election, you had this idea that there was going to be a certain way that funds were managed, that we weren't going to default on loans as a country. I'm just saying, not that we're going to, but that we don't really know. We're like, well, maybe. When he said a few times, like, well, maybe we'll just default. So it's kind of weird. So I wanted to make that caveat, not. In
SoCap, you don't have to, but maybe for the listeners, I don't know, but whatever.
But so basically, currencies stay more and more stable depending on a few things, and one of them is how reliable their history is of doing policy, monetary policy. Now, so the difference between that and cryptocurrency is it's in the code. So you can't change the monetary policy. There are a set number of Bitcoins that is the limit. And every 10 minutes, right now, there's a new 12.5 Bitcoins that get minted and awarded to a miner that does a certain block. So that's how you get more Bitcoin into the money supply, right?
Up to a certain threshold?
And that will get cut in half at the next halving event, half again, and then it will stop sometime in early 20s. It will stop, and so there won't be any new Bitcoins coming in. And that's why people say it's like a deflationary currency as opposed to most other currencies. You print more, the value of the currency relative to products goes down because there's more in circulation. There's not necessarily more demand. In the United States, we're lucky that we have a reserve currency, right? So that gives us a lot more stability. We can go around printing dollars more than say they could with euros, or they could with yen, or some other currency. Certainly, like look at Zimbabwe or Venezuela or something like that. Nobody wants their currencies, right? So they don't really have a lot that they can do with fiscal policy. Yeah. So that's the biggest difference, is that in a way, a cryptocurrency is more reliable from a how it's being managed standpoint than a normal fiat currency that's a state-sponsored currency. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think what's interesting about currencies that just struck me is this concept of to what percentage or degree something like cash or digital currencies are being used. And I think you have a little bit more to say on that, but we had talked with another client recently that was saying in India, their currency has been a massive issue because, and perhaps it was in India, it might have been.
They got rid of those big bills.
Bulgaria, they got rid of the 50s and 100s equivalently in the US because large bills were being used for things like drugs and the sex and trade and all of that that's going on, and thus they just essentially eliminated them. So anybody that had money under the couch or the high reserves essentially lost their net worth.
Yeah, and the way they did it over a very short period of time.
Yeah, they wanted to be able to track what's actually going on. That way it's not underground.
Yeah, one of the things I think that a lot of the more libertarian set, and I think even, I wouldn't say I'm a libertarian set, but I agree, is that banking and electronic commerce, electronic funds, has sort of like mutated into this enforcement arm of governments, which I think that it was, in a lot of ways it helped, having national currencies really helped the development of things rather than having a separate currency in each bank, which is, 150 years ago, 100 years ago, you had that. Different banks, having their own currencies. It was a lot more stable, but when they started enforcing law through currency, that made it a lot more difficult because, that's what's happening with the cannabis industry, right? That's what happens with, all sorts of different industries in different countries. Maybe you're trying to, talk about really important social issues and the government doesn't want to. They can lock down your bank. And I don't know if you've ever had, even to have a government official close down your bank, there's at least some sort of due process due. But a bank, a regulator makes a call to a bank, they can just shut your account down with no due process. So it's a kind of a scary world out there if you think about the fact that, yes, our money is great, but that actually depends on your country respecting privacy and not wanting to enforce too much through its currency.
So what are governments going to do now? I mean, at the end of the day, if this and as this becomes more and more predominant in our society, I can't imagine a government not wanting to control this because of exactly what you just said. They now lose that power, and fortunately for us, that would be great. Unfortunately for them, which I'm not sure they're willing to deal with, the loss of that power and the loss of that control for many different reasons, some good, some bad. What do you think governments are going to do about this new currency?
Well, I mean, there are very good things about cryptocurrencies that people don't really talk about a lot, but that cryptocurrencies are more traceable than cash. And there is a hell of a lot more. So in any given 10 days, there is more US dollar based crime paid for with cash, US dollars, than in a year of Bitcoin. Right. So it's, they can actually have a chance at tracking down people who are using Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies for illegal activities.
But that's still a fraction of what's being spent. I think you said, what is the percentage of what is still across the world done in cash? Because in the US, certainly in Europe, we're trending more to e-commerce and digital solutions. But I was astounded at the percentage of how many trillions are still done. So eMarketer does annual reports of the retail market worldwide. And I think last year their report was it was a $24 trillion market. So 24 trillion with a T dollars in the retail market. The amount of that was paid for electronically was $2 trillion.
Wow.
Right? So that's less than 10% is being paid for electronically, is being used with e-commerce. And it's like, as an American, especially it's like white male Americans, who we're like in the driver's seat right now. We like say that has got to be wrong. But if you've ever been to another country and you've ever talked to people about getting banks, I was in Barbados just this summer, and they have around 20% of their population has banking.
Wow.
They have to go through a whole process to get a bank. And if you live in a remote area where there's no banking, you don't have a bank.
Sure.
And that's why the first really successful digital currencies that have come out of Africa. With like BitPesa and stuff. And so what they'll do, I went to adopted my daughter from Swaziland, and we went a couple years ago to go back to Swaziland and everything. And you could go to a person who was wearing a vest with the name of the telephone company, and you could just go buy minutes from them, and then you could pay for everything by sending minutes via text.
Minutes were
currency, right?
Yeah.
So they'll give you,
way.
and it's fascinating. Now, it's have you guys ever been to Japan?
I've not.
So in Japan, they have a thing called Suica cards. They're value cards. They're RFID things in them, and you just go, or they're near field communication stuff actually. And so you go over like in the terminal, in the train terminal, you just put your card over it, and it deducts the money, and you go.
Yeah.
And this
essentially
is
Apple Pay.
well,
NFC?
far before Apple Pay, and it's actually not, because Apple Pay depends on some other stuff too. It's a very low security thing, but just like the text is, the text messaging, SMSing, minutes. But it's convenient, and there's a very low risk because you're not going to put $10,000 on your Suica card. You're not going to send 10,000 minutes, right? So if you lose it, it's like losing cash. Right?
Yeah, I've lost a $5 bill.
And you're like, oh, damn it. Or that $20 bill blew away. Well, that sucks, but it's not $3,000.
Yeah, we've spent $20 on a lot of stupid things.
We did have, that was the campaign we were going to do for a while, and all the dumb things you can do with $20.
Yeah, but so the point with that is that there's a huge need for electronic payments because they simplify everything. And and that need is not going to be served by banks. Not that there's anything wrong with banks. Banks are great for people who can use them and who want to. But depending on banking to serve the unbanked is kind of like, depending on the foxes to take care of the chickens. It's just not, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I read that.
A fox should be a fox. A chicken should be a chicken. But, we have to have a way to allow the 90% of the transactions in the world to be paid for electronically that doesn't require this third-party relationship on both sides.
And so that is exactly what you're solving with Wampie.
Right. So we provide software called Wampum Register, and it acts as essentially like a till for a business, and it allows them to accept cryptocurrency payments without having to pay exorbitant fees, without having to worry about returns. It's just like getting a cash payment. If people say, "Oh, well, how do you do a refund?" Well, you do a refund the same way you do a cash refund. You send them back some Bitcoin. You give them some cash. It's very straightforward, and you don't have to worry about, especially the high fees and the chargebacks for if you happen to be in an industry that's like going after tourists, or there's something that people can get from you and not have and just be gone and not have any way for you to contact them again. Those are typically high risk businesses from a credit card standpoint. They might pay anywhere from 5 to 22% not interest, but that's their credit card fee that they'll essentially pay. And that's crazy. But there are businesses that do this, and there's no need. And at the same time, there's people who, it's a small percentage of people. I think 30% of people in the United States are totally unbanked. And then there's about 20% more that are underbanked. And those are the ones that are served by going to Walmart and doing their e-commerce by buying cash cards. Yeah. Right? And they're paying $5 to reload their cash card that they're putting $50 on. So you figure out whether that's fair. And then you got people who are, come here, they work, and they're trying to send money back across, to wherever they're from. If they're from Mexico, or I used to live in Hawaii. They're going back all over Polynesia. They're sending money back there, and they're paying maybe to send $80 back. They're paying $15 on this side and maybe $10 on the other side to get $80. It's crazy. It's highway robbery. Yeah. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are totally making it so that is no longer required.
Interesting.
And I think I bounced around a lot, so I only half answered I think 60% of your questions.
That's probably our fault.
But one of the things says, why would a country ever want to embrace Bitcoin? Well, because they've already lost the ability to have any monetary policy. So you look at Zimbabwe, right? They're not making any headway there. It's a total loss. So maybe for them, the idea of a currency that can fluctuate 10% in a day is like a dream, because they're guaranteed to lose 20% every time they wake up. Right, with hyperinflation. So. If it's just with Bitcoin, you can take this sort of Russell's sort of dystopian fantasy, right? Where you have maybe the bottom 10 currencies in the world are, they realize they're destabilized. So a few of them start saying, we're going to just switch to cryptocurrency. So they're going to, let's call it Bitcoin, whatever. suddenly that cryptocurrency is more widely held. And unlike like a weird asset that puts together bad assets, like, that started the whole credit default swap and stuff that we went through in 2008, you actually improve the currency because it's more widely held and it provides some stability to an economy. And that's why for a long time, I say Zimbabwe a lot, they've been in the news a lot, you could buy Bitcoin. If you wanted to buy Bitcoin in Zimbabwe, it was about a 25% premium. So if you knew somebody in Zimbabwe, you could just send them Bitcoin, they could sell it, and you could make 25% right there.
Wow.
So we've been talking about some international use and Bitcoins and this cryptocurrency, but there's a lot of practical uses for it here in Colorado and in the United States in general. Surely internationally, there's a lot of benefits, but what you're talking about applies to some of these growing and emerging industries like marijuana.
Sure.
Here in Colorado, we've heard of stories and have friends who literally will buy storage units and vaults to put millions of dollars in there because they can't bank. They can't go to a credit union. So share with us, how does cryptocurrency provide a solution, and what does the trend look like for companies in at least the marijuana space?
Well, I gotta say this: you've not lived until you've seen a bricked what's it called, pallet of cash, like that. Seeing one in person myself was the most mind-blowing experience. It's like, wait, how much is this?
You feel like the Joker from Batman. You're like,
of course there are these big armed guards there all around, but so you don't quite feel like that. Like, what, me worry? No, but
That's a big gun.
Yeah. But they desperately, even Colorado's way ahead of the game in the cannabis industry because at least they have banks. They have some place to store their money. But they don't have a way to accept their money. They have a few options, but they require banking on both sides. Right.
You can just Oregon Trail, like barter and trade. And
he can say, oh yeah,
I got 10 pounds of flour.
That will give you a very, very loose joint.
A half smoked joint.
Here's a doobie for you.
Yeah, but there's no way for them right now. They can't take credit cards because credit cards require it goes through an acquiring bank, and the acquiring banks are all federally regulated. The same problem with some of them have cashless debit cards, so you can use your debit card. Those are even that people are kind of more and more afraid to install those because they're based on interpretations, and everybody's afraid of how the federal government's going to be interpreting this stuff. Cash is okay because cash transactions are you're not involving a financial transaction until you do your deposit.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first areas that we thought go in. We show them how easy it is to accept electronic payments, and they don't have to have big guards carrying duffel bags full of cash to make payments. In Colorado, you've got people doing duffel bags full of cash to go deposit to the bank. But in California and in Oregon and other places, you've got them, every single payment they make is a drop. And they have to have a guard do it. Can you imagine how expensive that is? How about you pay your rent? So you got a decent size, maybe you're paying $10,000 a month in rent, and you're going to go drop it off $10,000
every time.
No, they won't take it because it's too big of a risk.
Yeah.
So they'll either make you take it to their bank, and the bank will charge you, or you'll go and get. I've heard of these guys going and getting as many money orders as possible. Like it's $1,500 is like the money order limit. So they'll go and they'll try to pay their taxes every day with money orders because they can at least get money orders from the King Supers or from the mail. So they're being very innovative on trying to figure out ways around it. And what we wanted to do is give them a way not only to accept payments, but to make payments throughout the supply chain. So if they wanted to work with you guys, they could pay you with Bitcoin, and it would be really easy. It would be cheaper for you guys to just accept cryptocurrency than it would to have to worry about doing a drop and all that kind of stuff.
Or another vendor, or
or
whomever. But then that brings up to the point that whoever is buying said product equally needs a
way to get it.
cryptocurrency. So I think a lot of people are even stuck with, okay, I can go get a credit card. That's pretty easy. How do I go about owning my own cryptocurrency? And then do I need an app to be able to make this transaction? Walk someone through, okay, say I were to go to even Target to be able to wanting to buy stuff with cryptocurrency, let alone a marijuana shop. What does that look like? How does regular Joe Schmo go and start mining or acquiring Bitcoin to start transacting with cryptocurrency?
So I think the first thing to remember is that the barrier for getting a credit card has already been passed, but the barrier to get a credit card is actually pretty big, right? You have to, at the very minimum, you have to fill out a form, whether it's online or in person, send it in, and maybe in a couple of weeks you'll get a credit card. Now, if you go to a department store, it's a little different because they're funding it themselves. But in most cases, you're talking about a 2-week process from start to finish to get a credit card.
If you're approved.
If you're approved,
Yep.
right, which goes through a bank and everything. So just to sort of remind people that you're not born with a credit card. It doesn't go. You're not like giving it as soon as they spank you, right? So you've got to get that, and to get Bitcoin, you have a much less complicated transaction now. You can go Bitcoin ATM. So there's growing number of Bitcoin ATMs. There's 3 or 4 different companies here in Denver that are putting out Bitcoin ATMs all over the place. So you can buy from there. You can buy from a person. There are websites out there like Local Bitcoins. You can just find somebody, meet them in the coffee shop, buy some Bitcoin from them. It still seems like sort of clandestine, but it's we're now like getting in people's cars that we've never met before. So this is more and more acceptable. There's even like Abra and AirTM, which are other companies that will allow you to be a Bitcoin teller yourself. Right, so it's pretty amazing, the different technology. Then the least expensive but the hardest method is to go through an exchange, right? And that's the way that most people start because they are thinking everything has to be done through a bank, and they'll do that. So like Coinbase is probably the most popular. My favorite is Uphold. These are the sort of consumer-driven Bitcoin exchanges where you're not necessarily doing trades and stuff like that. You're just trying to buy a particular cryptocurrency at a particular point in time, and you're just going for the current price.
Yeah.
You're not doing that sort of trade. So there's a number of ways to get in. If you're going to get it from an ATM, it's instant. If you're going to get it from an individual, you have to schedule it. But some places may have like tellers nearby, like they may hang out and just have people waiting to sell you Bitcoin. Right now, you can do through, like if you use USAA, so the I guess veterans, a lot of them have that. They have an agreement with Coinbase, so it'll automatically hook into your USAA account, and you can have your Coinbase wallet automatically get funded with Bitcoin. So it's happening. It's getting easier and easier. The process, like if you wanted to pull out your phone and set up a Bitcoin wallet right now, it would take about a minute, maybe a minute and a half if you really wanted to read everything, and then I could send you Bitcoin super fast.
And essentially, like a PayPal or a Venmo, you just essentially need what is my account or username to be able to then make that transaction.
So remember that with everything I have is a caveat. It's like there's no simple answers to that. I use Venmo and PayPal, but I think they're lipstick on the pig. Yeah. Because if you're going to pay me with Bitcoin or with PayPal, you have to have a PayPal account. I have to have a PayPal account. You have to have a bank account or a credit card. I have to have a bank account or a credit card. So then to send me money, you're going to use my username and send that through, or I'm going to send you a request or whatever. And it's all going through this closed loop network, right? With Bitcoin, what happens is, and I've got this paper wallet right here. This is an example. What it has is an address. This address is a really long string that humans can't really read or determine. So there's a QR code, and a wallet will read this QR code very easily. And so one of the cool things is all payments in Bitcoin are a send. So you scan it with your wallet, and I'm going to send money to that address. I'm not the person who's receiving the funds never has any information about the sender, right? It's only where did the address, what's the address it came from? That's it. So it's it's really clean. It doesn't have any fraud issues, right? Because you're always sending. So you can steal Bitcoin, but you can't fraudulently pull Bitcoin.
So that's how people have lost millions of dollars equivalently. Is did they hack it and just sent it, or?
Most people have lost money in Bitcoin because they've had their funds in what's called custodial wallets. So your bank account that you have is a custodial situation. So you don't actually have possession of any of the money. Sure. The bank does, and then you have basically an account that gives you withdrawal privileges, right? So you don't control it. Mm-hmm. So if you have an account with an exchange, you're typically going to have a custodial wallet. So your wallet, you don't have the key. You don't have you don't have software that has the key. They do, and they'll send it on your behalf. Mm-hmm. I always tell people to use non-custodial wallets like Copay and like Airbits. They're wallets so that the funds all control is in your device or your computer, or like this one. This is a paper wallet. This is what you'd use for the public, and then under here, this is my private key. So this is what I'd use to move money around. So you could you can basically charge this up, give this to somebody for a gift, and now they have a Bitcoin wallet.
Very interesting, huh?
Yeah, but so that's why there's theft, but most theft happens at a custodial situation. So whenever people trade. Like my ex just recently bought some Bitcoin because she wanted to get in, and I tell her, look, you got your money, buy it in Coinbase, buy it in Uphold, but then you move it to your Copay wallet that's on your phone or on your computer. You can back it up, no problems, or you can have a hardware wallet or a paper wallet that you put it on. That way, nobody is going to be able to steal it from you, or it's a much smaller target than going after the $160 million that's up at Coinbase, right. Or that they make themselves into a beautiful honeypot of money.
Sure. So this is all very fascinating. What are you most excited about? You're clearly in this super knowledgeable and able to see the trend as to where it could be going. Of course, it's up in the air. There could be new players that come in, other solutions. But in your eyes, what do you see happening?
I see commerce being lubricated in a huge way. I think that what I think is really interesting. We're in this time when the internet the internet was new, and everybody was talking about, should we use Gopher? Should we use FTP? Should we use HTTP? There are lots of different tools and protocols everybody used. That's where we are with cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin is the first one, and it will be good for a while. It may not be the best one for e-commerce, but I don't know. The beauty of it is that people have a vote in what they end up using, right, for it. So what I love is that once people jump into this wallet, this electronic wallet world, suddenly the functionality that's in the wallet takes over a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So I tell people, you download the Copay wallet, you have a little bank in your hands. Well, think about this. I've got friends who live in the Pacific Rim. They have bank accounts, and they have different they may have US dollars, they may have yen, they may have different currencies, and they can move things back and forth. Well, in the United States, we're all about the US dollars, and if it's not in dollars, we're like, what? Mm-hmm. Math? But your wallet will do all that. So I'd say within 5 years, if I need to pay you $5 and all I have is Neo, my wallet will automatically convert that and get that to you in a way that you can accept it.
Wow.
So it'll be doing all this. And there's a great company that's here. What's it called? Great, now I can't remember the name. Anyway, that will automatically, you'll basically give it two addresses, and it'll send money from one to Shapeshift. Oh. Yeah, Shapeshift, and it will take your funds, so you can send from Bitcoin, and I can move it to Ethereum. I don't have to go through an exchange. It just automatically, I say, this is the address I want the Ethereum to go to, and it gives you the target address to send your Bitcoin to. Boom, it sends it over.
Wow,
converts it
that's
all for you. And your
absolutely
wallet will
crazy.
be able to do that very soon.
Got it.
And that's what excites me, because the barriers, the financial barriers across countries will, for all intents and purposes, go away.
Yeah.
So the power is ultimately shifting. It seems like the pendulum is moving towards the consumer.
I hope so. I think it'll be more convenient. And I think that there's certainly some power in the consumer. It's hard to say. I think the power is shifting as to where it's shifting to. I'm not exactly sure. I think consumers' main power is their ability to buy or not to buy. Mm-hmm. And I think that having a currency, having them not have to choose between one currency or another, is probably a big power boost for them. So hopefully it will be more power to them.
I think my advice around that is to understand currencies in general and get to understand this, because we don't learn about money at all. The idea that we're having this conversation, we're probably already way above most people, not because we lack the ability to understand, but because we just come out of the gate and I've got $1 for the tooth fairy, but that's about it. And nobody explained to me where that dollar came from, how I really earned that dollar, for the most part in most families. And there is a saying or a theory that if you redistributed all the wealth in the world, that eventually the same 0.01% that control the vast majority of the wealth today will control it again. So while this platform allows for people to maybe get a step ahead, if you don't understand it and you don't take the time to have an education around it, just like anything else, and you think you're going to maximize your investment because right now, if I jump in and I buy, a single Bitcoin, then I'm going to be rich or whatever it may be, and you're doing it for the investment purposes without truly understanding it, without understanding our current system and what is coming in the future of it. I think it's true that those in power and that understand and take the time to understand currency, it'll all go back to them no matter how it changes. And so it's the power is in the education, I think. And the more people can get educated, and thank you for being here because this is empowering people to do that, it's the only time that we can stop that. If we continue to be ignorant about currency across the board, no matter how it changes, the same people that have a desire to be in power and to carry wealth, they're going to know how to go do that because they've decided, good or bad, to capitalize on it.
Yeah, I would say that you're absolutely right. And the beautiful thing about most cryptocurrencies, is that they're much more transparent. Mm-hmm. So that if you have the inclination to educate yourself, you can learn and you can really understand it. Yeah. Whereas it's more like fiat currencies are more of the world of wizarding, Yeah. And the cryptocurrencies are more like the world of science, that you can really actually understand it.
Yeah, this is a big reset button, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you can fall just as far behind because all of a sudden, a generation from now, it's going to be like the credit card where I just know I'm transacting with it, but I don't really have the education behind it to understand how to collect and receive enough to create wealth for myself.
Yeah, I'd encourage, I think this is just a launching point for the listeners here and the viewers to be able to dive deeper. There's a ton of resources out there. More and more people are providing information about this. So the time is now to hop in and get your feet wet. If you are a business owner, however, and you want to be able to start accepting or having this digital cash register, you have an awesome solution. Tell more people more about how, as a business owner, you can be able to start using Wampie.
Sure. So we wanted it to be as simple as possible. So whether you're taking payments online or you're doing it at the point of sale, like in a store, or you're doing even just cutting invoices and sending out bills, our software supports all three of those modes. And it runs in the cloud. We actually run it as a leased software, and we do that so that we can deploy it for you on your own server instance that we don't have any control over. So we can't touch the money. We don't have any control over it. We don't have the keys. The way that it works is it's like $250. We install the software for you on an Amazon instance that we show you how to set up, and then we perform any maintenance on it, and you don't pay us again unless you have a prepaid plan. But what we typically do is the most that we'll take for any transaction is $3. So if you think about, if you have a business that the average bill is $500, you're probably paying, maybe $20 to $30 for that transaction and credit card fees. It's now $3.
Yeah, for us, it's a lifesaver. I think we need to definitely switch over here.
Yeah.
Because I like the idea of $3 more than $300.
And that's the top end, right? It gets cheaper from there.
Yeah. And then from there, you as a business owner have the ability to decide how you convert your cryptocurrency, right?
That's right. So we also don't tell, we're a crypto only solution. So what we'll do is we'll say, if you need to hook up with an exchange, we can hook directly into your exchange for you and send the funds there. If you want to hold, so our first customer is this coffee shop in Hawaii, in Honolulu, called Local Joe Hawaii. He was just, I really want to do this, because there are all these tech guys around that wanted to pay with Bitcoin. So, literally he's made 700% because he just held on to all the Bitcoin that he got, and so he's just like, oh my God, Russell, this is amazing. And so
not only was he saving money, but because of the fact that he's in the game early enough, he made an investment for him on top of it. Wow.
And he was the one who first told me, he's like, Russell, there are a lot of people that just don't want to have to buy, they want to buy Bitcoin wholesale. I was like, what do you mean buy Bitcoin wholesale? It's like, well, let's say only 1% of your business is ever going to consider paying in Bitcoin, but for you, let's say you're selling them something that you bought for $50, they buy for $100, you're going to get $100 of Bitcoin for that $50 that you spent. So you're essentially buying it wholesale at a much lower rate than you would if you were going to go buy it from an exchange or somebody else. So I was like, that's
so along those lines, and before we wrap up here, there's a lot of people that are hearing about Bitcoin, and in their mind, their biggest reason, whether they understand it or not, for getting any Bitcoin is because they see the opportunity to make money, and for it to be an investment, right? And while I think that's smart and exciting, there's a lot more reasons to get involved in this currency and the next generation of revenue, other than trying to buy a bunch of Bitcoin right now so you can get rich, and then when it goes away, I think that's probably the wrong approach. And what are your thoughts around that?
It's a hard one, because the past results are what they are. And and really Bitcoin's like a great example of supply and demand and economics done in its its purest form, right? People really want this for whatever reason. So even though it's it's demand that's maybe a little fantastical, the demand is still there. But from an investment standpoint, the fact that it is a deflationary currency, so it's going to go up, it's a good long-term strategy, right? I don't have any doubt that it's going to go down again and then come up again at some point, because everything does. Nothing can go up nonstop. Yeah. But I'm not selling my Bitcoins right now. I do use them for buying stuff, though. It's just hard to say. I don't want to give investment advice or anything like that, but I think there are a lot of people who are saying, if you really want to invest, there's better places to go than Bitcoin. There's better cryptocurrencies if you're interested in that. But it all comes down to, like, individually, why would you make any investment? Like, if you're just like gambling, which a lot of like stock trading is just gambling, right? Then sure, you want to gamble on Bitcoin, go for it. I think that's a good gamble. But if you're I think you're always better off knowing about what you're investing in. So if you're going to invest in Bitcoin, you owe it to yourself to look at a few of the big, the best videos out there, like from Andreas Antonopoulos or something, that do introductions to Bitcoin, and understand what you're getting into, so you're not taken by surprise. You should understand, like, some of the, and you don't have to understand the math or any of that stuff, but just conceptually what it is that's going on with Bitcoin, and use it. It's more important for you if you're going to invest than if you're going to use it, that you understand it.
Right. I think additionally, it's a way to diversify your assets. You can find security in a multitude of ways, and I think this is just another avenue that allows for consumers to be able to diversify their assets.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, and it's sad. I think that one of the things that's driving it is a continued sort of devaluation of the dollar. Right. The dollar, people are not holding it as high regard, and because of that, Bitcoin is looking like a great hedge against losses that you might get from keeping your money in dollars. That's part, at least, of the psychology that's causing this.
So as we're ending this, from our perspective, but mostly because we've got a lot of business owners that do listen to us, and direct advice to SoCap as well. Selfishly, I'd love to know, what are your words of wisdom for us as a company in terms of this new currency? What should we be doing right now?
So I think you should definitely be accepting it. There's no downside. The cost is low. If you're in a business that you're a single, you've got, like, you don't have a register. If you run your business out of a wallet or out of one bank account and there's nobody else, you don't need any software but a wallet to run it from. You don't need Wampum. You don't need anything else. You can do it from an open source wallet that you can get. If you've got a business that has to send invoices or wants to interface with a point of sale or something like that, you can use software. Our software, get in at really almost no cost, much less than one piece of hardware that you'd have to buy for anybody else, and you can get into this. And once you're in, you'll see that it is absolutely the simplest, most secure, and easiest way to transfer funds from one person to another. There's never been anything this easy. And once you realize that, then you realize how commerce is going to evolve in the future. This is going to be the evolution. It may be, maybe Bitcoin's cousin, something like that. But it may be Ethereum. It may be, who knows. But getting into it now is smart, and it's low risk. And if you're a business and you're afraid that the volatility, there are ways you can make it so there's almost no volatility. Right. So there's lots of different approaches. If you don't have a bank, you can go fund a debit card that's funded by cryptocurrency. So you can do lots of different things so that you can start accepting this and benefiting from it now.
That's great.
Wonderful. Well, Russell, you've absolutely been a wealth of knowledge here, all puns intended here at SoCap. For our viewers, you are able to click the link below to be able to contact Russell with Wampum. But for our listeners, would you share, how can they get in touch with you? How can they get more information or even get involved with Wampum?
Cryptowampum.com, CRYPTOWAMPUM.com. Or you can look, just my Twitter handle is RCASTAG, Rcastag. Or you can look up Crypto Wampum or Wampum online, and you'll find us. LinkedIn, Facebook, all the various places. But just go through there and you'll be able to contact us directly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time. And
I guess I should say my phone number too, should I?
Probably not.
Call, yeah. There are 750 number of people that just called you right now. Yeah. I have enough robocalls anyway.
You can give the digital credit card with your social security number on it, right?
Well, we can give them we'll give them a wallet.
There you go. Much better. Well, again, thank you for coming in and contributing to SoCap Talks. It's been an honor to have you here as a spotlight. We've got a very exciting trend here, and we're excited to see how it evolves for you and ourselves hop in as SoCap. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing where this takes all of us on this journey.
This has been a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for coming and talking to you guys.
Thank you.